Good day everyone, I'm Micaela and I will be discussing the general characteristics of ecosystem down to the ecological pyramids. So let's talk about the general characteristics of an ecosystem first. So according to Smith, the following are the general characteristics of ecosystem. First, the ecosystem is a major structural and functional unit of ecology. Second, the structure of an ecosystem is related to its species diversity. As such, the more complex ecosystem has high species diversity. Third, the relative amount of energy required to maintain an ecosystem depends on its structure. The more complex the structure, the lesser the energy it requires to maintain itself. Fourth, the function of the ecosystem is related to energy flow in material cycling through and within the system. Fifth, ecosystems mature by passing from less complex to more complex states. Early stages of such succession have an excess of potential energy. Later or mature stages have less energy accumulation. Sixth, both the environment and the energy fixation in any given ecosystem are limited. They cannot be exceeded in any way without causing serious undesirable effect. Seventh, alterations in the environments represent selective pressures upon the population to which it must adjust. Organisms which fail to adjust to the changed environment must vanish. So, to conclude, an ecosystem is a variable-sized integrated unit or zone that includes vegetation, fauna, microbes, and the environment. Most ecosystems deal with a well-defined soil, climate, flora, and fauna, as well as their own adaptability, change, and tolerance capabilities. Any ecosystem's operation is based on a succession of cycles. These cycles are driven by energy flow, as the energy being the solar energy. So now, let's move on to the structure of ecosystem. So by structure of an ecosystem, it is the composition of biological community including species, numbers, biomass, life history, and distribution in space, and the quantity and distribution of the non-living materials such as nutrients, water, etc. Structure of an ecosystem, the range or gradient of conditions of existence such as temperature. The structure of an ecosystem is in fact a description of the species of organisms that are present, including information on their life histories, population, and distribution in space. So it helps us to figure out who's who in the ecosystem. Upod gihapon dinhi an descriptive information about non-living features and ecosystem, which provides us with information about the range of climatic conditions that prevail in that area. So, from structural point of view, all ecosystems consist of the following two basic components. The first one is the abiotic substances or the non-living components. The second one is the biotic substances or the living components. In biology and ecology, abiotic components or abiotic factors are non-living chemical and physical elements of the environment that have an impact on living organisms and the functioning of ecosystems. Abiotic factors and the events they cause are fundamental to biology as a whole. Example of abiotic substances are water, sunlight, air, temperature, etc. So, the abiotic substances include basic inorganic and organic compounds of the environment or habitat of the organism. Inorganic components. The inorganic components of an ecosystem are under carbon dioxide, water, nitrogen, calcium, and phosphate. So, ininiratanen are involved in matter cycles or biogeochemical cycles. Matter cycle is where matter moves from one form to another or from one place to another on the earth and inside its ecosystem. And biogeochemical cycle is any of the natural pathways by which essential elements of living matter are circulated. Organic components. The organic components of an ecosystem are proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, and amino acids. All of these are synthesized by the biota, flora, and fauna of an ecosystem and are reached to ecosystem as their waste, dead remains, etc. The climate, temperature, light, soil, etc. are other abiotic components of the ecosystem. So, the second basic component is the biotic substances or living components. Biotic components are all the living things in an ecosystem. They are the animals, plants, and microorganisms. Biotic components also include both living and dead organisms' waste. This is indeed the trophic structure of any ecosystem, where living organisms are distinguished on the basis of their nutritional relationships. From this trophic or nutritional standpoint, an ecosystem has two components. The first one is the autotrophic component or producers. These are the components in which fixation of light energy, use of simple inorganic substances, and build-up of complex substance predominate. This component is constituted mainly by green plants, including photosynthetic bacteria. To some lesser extent, chemosynthetic microbes also contribute to the buildup of organic matter. Members of the autotrophic component are known as ecosystem producers because they capture energy from non-organic sources, especially light, and store some of the energy in the form of chemical bonds for the later use. Algae of various types are the most important producers of aquatic ecosystems. Although in estuaries and marshes, grasses may be important as producers. Terrestrial ecosystems have trees, herbs, grasses, and mosses that contribute with varying importance to the production of the ecosystems. The second component is the heterotrophic component or consumers. These are the components in which utilization, rearrangement, and decomposition of complex materials predominate. The organisms involved are known as consumers as they consume autotrophic organisms like bacterial and algae for their nutrition. The amount of energy that the producers capture sets the limit on the availability of energy for the ecosystem. Thus, when a green plant captures a certain amount of energy from sunlight, it is said to produce the energy for the ecosystem. And the consumers are further categorized as macro-consumers and micro-consumers. Macro-consumers are a relatively large heterotrophic consumer. Macro-consumers are the consumers which, in an order as they occur in a food chain, are herbivores, carnivores, or omnivores. Herbivores are also known as primary consumers. Secondary and tertiary consumers, if present, are carnivores or omnivores. They all Pagotrophs that include mainly animals that ingest other organic and particulate organic matter. While the microconsumers are popularly known as decomposers, they are saprotrophs and they include mainly bacteria, actinomycetes, and fungi. They break down complex compounds of dead or living protoplasm. They absorb some of the decomposition or breakdown products. Besides, they release inorganic nutrients in an environment, making them available again to autotrophs. The biotic component of any ecosystem may be thought of as the functional kingdom of nature. The reason is they are based on the type of nutrition and the energy source used. The trophic structure of an ecosystem is one kind of producer-consumer arrangement where each food level is known as trophic level. Standing corp. The amount of living material in different trophic levels or in a component population is known as the standing corp. The term applies to both plants as well as animals. The standing corp may be expressed in terms of number of organisms per unit area, biomass, organism mass in unit area. We can measure it as living weight, dry weight, ash-free dry weight of carbon weight, or calories or any other convenient unit suitable. Decomposers. In the absence of decomposers, no ecosystem could function long. In their absence, dead organisms would pile up without rotting. As would waste products, it would not be long before an essential element. Phosphorus, for example, would be first in short supply and then gone altogether. The reason is the dead corpse littering the landscape would be hoarding the entire supply. The decomposers tear apart organisms and, in their metabolic processes, release to the environment atoms and molecules that can be reused again by autotrophic point of view. Instead, they are important from the material or the nutrient point of view. Energy cannot be recycled, but matter can be. Hence, it is necessary to feed energy into ecosystem to keep up with the dissipation of heat or the increase in entropy. Matter must be recycled again and again by an ecological process called biogeochemical cycle. The structure of ecosystem can be illustrated as under with the help of Pan's example. Abiotic part. The abiotic or non-living parts of a freshwater pond include the following: water, dissolved oxygen, carbon dioxide, inorganic salts such as phosphate, nitrates and chlorides of sodium, potassium, and calcium, a multitude of organic compounds such as amino acids, humic acids, etc. According to the functions of the organisms, their contribution towards keeping the ecosystem operating as a stable interacting whole. Producers. In a freshwater pond, there are two types of producers. First are the larger plants growing along the shore or floating in shallow water. Second are the microscopic floating plants, most of which are algae. These tiny plants are collectively referred to as phytoplankton. They are usually not visible. They are visible only when they are present in great abundance and giving the water a greenish tinge. Phytoplanktons are more significant as food producers for the freshwater pond ecosystem than are the more readily visible plants. Consumers. Among the macro-consumers or pagotrophs of pond ecosystem include insects and insect larvae, fish, and perhaps some freshwater clams. Primary consumers. Primary consumers such as zooplankton, animal plankton, are found near the surface of water. Likewise, benthos or bottom forms are the plant eaters or the herbivores. Secondary consumers. The secondary consumers are the carnivores that eat the primary consumers. There might be some tertiary consumers that eat the carnivores or the secondary consumers. Saprotrophs. The ecosystem is completed by saprotrophs or decomposer organisms such as bacteria, flagellate protozoans, and fungi. They break down the organic compounds of cells from dead producer and consumer organisms in any of these ways. First, into small organic molecules which they utilize themselves, or inorganic substances that can be used as raw materials by green plants. Ecological pyramids. The main characteristic of each type of ecosystem in trophic structure, the interaction of food chain and the size metabolism relationship between the linearly arranged various biotic components of an ecosystem. We can show the trophic structure and function at successive trophic levels as under producers, herbivores, and two carnivores. It may be known by means of ecological pyramids. In this pyramid, the first or producer level constitutes the base of the pyramid. The successive levels, the three, make the apex. Ecological pyramids are of three general types as under. The first one is the pyramid of numbers. It shows the number of individual organisms at each level. Second is the pyramid of biomass. It indicates decrease of biomass in each tropical level from base to apex. Third, the pyramid of energy. It shows the rate of energy flow and or productivity at successive trophic levels. A brief description of these pyramids is as under. Pyramids of numbers. The pyramids of numbers show the relationship between producers, herbivores, and carnivores at successive trophic levels in terms of their numbers. In a grassland, the producers, which are mainly grasses, are always maximum in number. This number shows a decrease towards apex. The reason is obvious. Number than the grasses. The secondary consumers, snakes and lizards, are less in number than the rabbits and mice. In the top or the tertiary consumers, hawks or other birds are least in number. In this way, the pyramid becomes upright. In a pond ecosystem, also the pyramid is upright as under. The producers, which are mainly the phytoplanktons, are as algae, bacteria, etc., are maximum in number. The herbivores, which are smaller fish, rotifers, etc., are less in number than the producers. The secondary consumers or the carnivores, such as small fish which eat up each other, water beetles, etc., are less in number than the herbivores. Finally, the top or the tertiary consumers, the bigger fish, are least in number. However, the case is not so in a forest ecosystem. There, the pyramid of numbers is somewhat different in shape. Producer, here the producers are mainly large-sized trees. They are less in number and form the base of the pyramid. The herbivores, which are the fruit-eating birds, elephants, deer, etc., are more in number than the producers. Thereafter, there is a gradual decrease in the number of successive carnivores. In this way, the pyramid is made again upright. However, in a parasite's food chain, the pyramids are inverted. This is for the reason that a single plant may support the growth of many herbivores. In its turn, each herbivore may provide nutrition to several parasites, which support many hyperparasites. Consequently, from the producer towards consumers, there is a reverse position. In other words, the number of organisms gradually shows an increase, making the pyramid inverted in shape. The second pyramid is the pyramids of biomass. The pyramids of biomass are comparatively more fundamentalism, as the reason is they, instead of geometric factor, show the quantitative relationships of the standing crops. The pyramids of biomass in different types of ecosystem may be compared as as under. In grassland and forest, there is generally a gradual decrease in biomass of organisms at successive levels from the producers to the top carnivores. In this way, the pyramids are upright. However, in a pond, the producers are small organisms. Their biomass is least, and this value gradually shows an increase towards the apex of the pyramid, and the pyramids are made inverted in shape. The third and last pyramid is the pyramid of energy. The energy of pyramid gives the best picture of overall nature of the ecosystem. Here, the number and weight of organisms at any level depends on the rate at which food is being produced. If we compare the pyramid of energy with the pyramids of numbers and biomass, which are pictures of the standing situations or organism present at any moment, the pyramid of energy is a picture of the rates of passage of food mass through the food chain. It is always upright in shape. So I think that's all, and thank you so much for listening.